called the Holy Shroud of Turin. Why Turin? Torino is the Italian word. It's the city where this cloth ended up. A long history. It began in Jerusalem at the tomb of Jesus. It is believed that this is the cloth that Joseph of Arimathea provided to bury Jesus in. Okay, he obtained the body of Jesus after he died. They took him down. They wrapped him in a linen cloth provided by Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin, a very wealthy man. This was indeed an expensive piece of fabric. It was linen, pure linen, white. And they buried Jesus on the shroud. Now, what happened if you imagine this to be the corpus? This is the body of Jesus. What they did, they put part of the cloth underneath. They put the body on top. Let's say this is the head, this is the feet. They put the cloth underneath, then they bend the cloth over the face down to the feet. So what you have here is the image of a man who has been crucified, who was scourged, who was crowned, who was pierced on the side with a lance and buried. This is a record of that event, and I will show you where the signs are. If you go right to the center, those of you who might not see the center, right here, that's where you will see the front of the body. This is the head, right here. Okay? And this is the body. These are the arms folded like this. And he was laid down with the hands over his lower stomach. And you can see this mark here, the darker mark. That is blood. And it has been tested, it has been evaluated. By the way, this item, this icon, this image is the most researched, studied, investigated, experimented upon piece of furniture, quotation marks, that we have in the world. There's a tremendous debate going on because some people believe that it was a forgery. Somebody did it in the Middle Ages, and you will see if that could be true or not as we go on briefly explaining what this cloth contains. So you're looking at the front part of the body. All these marks that you see here are the marks created by the flagellum. This is what they used to scourge him with. And as you can see, there are 3 thongs. We have reproduced this according to what it would be in real life, with little metal balls at the end. And when the soldiers would strike, they would wrap around the body and he would pull. And sometimes as they pulled back, there would be skin and flesh with these little creatures at the end of the thongs. This is a pretty accurate flagellum according to the description that we have. So you see in the front, these are the legs, and you can see these marks over here, what they look like stains. They are not. They are signs of blood, and they are the blood from the wounds of the feet. On the other side, you see the back. It's symmetrically correct. This is the head, the back. What are these marks over here? They are the wounds caused by the crown that was placed on top of Jesus' head. Just like you see the wounds on the front, these are the wounds on the back, and then you see the back here. All these markings are the scourges. The study have even given them the chance to number the number of strikes that he received. And you can go down. This is the thighs in the back, the lower legs, and you see the sole right here. You see the sole and the wound of the nail. And this is the other foot, the sole of the feet. Now, pathologists have looked at this and they can tell you how tall this man was, how much he weighed, and how much weight he lost during this ordeal. Now, that's what the shroud is. So what about all these stains and marks? What are they all about? In a sense, pay no attention to that. That's not the important thing. The important thing is the image that is in the back. And it's done to scale. And what happened in 1889, photography had just about been invented, and the Holy See in Rome gave permission, in Turin rather, gave permission to this photographer to take a picture of this cloth. When he went to the laboratory to develop the film, he was amazed. He thought that he would see the negative being developed. He didn't see the negative. He saw a positive picture of what he had photographed, which means this is not a positive, it's a negative. So when you take a picture of it, you develop it, and you see the negative, it's not a negative, it's a positive. So whatever you see here, you have to reverse. If somebody did it in the Middle Ages, that person not only had to be a genius, but he had to know how to reverse the whole thing. Impossible, one would say. But that will not be enough, because you still have a scientist, a genius that can do something like that, and they say, no, this is not the real cloth. The real shock came when they took a carbon test, carbon 14. Now, if anybody here knows anything about science, I don't know very much, but carbon 14 is used to evaluate the time, the age of an artifact. So that should be proof for sure. They did the test, and guess what? It came back, and it was marking 1260, 1340, something like that. So the word was, the Shroud of Turin is a fake. It was made in the Middle Ages by somebody. It really shocked everybody, including the leaders of the church in Turin. And they said, well, that's what science said. But the church did not say, okay, let's destroy it, it's gone. The Pope, as I mentioned, is going to be going to Turin the 21st of June on pilgrimage to venerate the Holy Shroud. As far as Pope Francis is concerned, this is authentic. And we will be, if you haven't seen it, CNN is running programs about the Shroud. They're going to have all kinds of programs. Watch the YouTube, television. This is going to be spoken about like you won't believe it. They are expecting, they are going to expose it from April 19th this year to June 24th. And they are expecting 3 million people to land in Turin to view the Shroud. And they're not going to be like you. This is it's not the original, naturally. This is a copy, but they don't have the luxury that you have right now to look at it and examine it and listen to a presentation. They're going to be walking and moving, and in a few minutes they will be out of sight outside the Duomo of the church where this is kept. So, I was talking about these marks. What are they? Well, if you think of this cloth and you fold it along this way as if it were a sheet, and then that way, so you have this little piece that you see. This will be in the back. And then you fold it to make it a little square about this way. The whole thing got folded and put into a silver casket. There was a fire, 1532, where the church where this was kept burned. And it was not an accident. There are people who would like to destroy this if they could. They tried twice that we know of. They might try it again and again, until they might succeed. The security around this cloth is incredible. You cannot even get close to it. If you throw a hand grenade, it won't hurt it. It's way, way protected beyond bullets, hand grenades, and every kind of things. Well, the fire burned the church, and the fire melted the silver casket, and the silver went through the cloth. This is where these things happen. And as you can see, they are synchronized because they will be folded, and the molten silver went through the whole cloth. Luckily, it did not affect the image. Only in certain spots you can see that part of the body is not here because it was destroyed by these holes. And this is scorching marks that left. There are water stains throughout the whole thing. For the first 1,200 years, 1,300 years, it was kept all over the place. From Jerusalem, went to Edessa in Turkey. From there, it went to Constantinople. We know where it was at different times, but the documentation is not as good as you would like to see it. But from 1352, we know exactly where it was. It was in France. It was in the possession of this knight who was in the crusade, brought it back from Jerusalem, and built a church in France to house the Holy Shroud of Turin. It eventually ended up in the hands of the Savoy family, which is the next royal family of the Italian kings. And the kings of Italy donated it to the Holy See. So now it is in the possession of the Holy See in Turin. And the church has been exposing it every 50, 25 years. The next exposition should have been in 2025. Pope Francis advanced it 10 years, and that's why he is having this here. Now, why did he do that? We do not know. We might find out after he goes there what is his intention. God only knows what he will come up with. So what happens? When they took this and they took pictures and photographs and everything else, they began to realize, what is this image really showing? Definitely, everybody agrees that this is the image of a man who has been scourged brutally, who has been crowned, who has been nailed to the cross, and who was pierced on the side. This scar here, this stain, is blood. And there is serum around it. Now, the only way we know that is because of x-rays. Otherwise, you won't see it. When you look at this, if you did not know what you were looking at, you must say, I don't understand it. But if you see a picture, it becomes clearer. You will have a man here that is badly beaten, the face is swollen, and he is in horrible conditions. He was pierced by a lance. Now, you see crucifixes sometimes. Where is the wound on the side? On the left side. That's what this shows. If you put the man down, if you put me down, okay, the wound is over here, the left. Was it on the left? No, it was on the right. But that's why it's on the left. This is a negative. So what you see here, you have to reverse. The wound happened on the side. Once the soldier pierced the side of Jesus, St. John says, blood and water came out of the side. Water, serum, because the antechamber of the heart was pierced and there was collected fluid there that came out. We would not have known that. That is right here because it's invisible. But with x-rays, they see it. Now, if it was a forgery, how did the person do that? He would have had to know x-rays. X-rays were not there in the 1300s. And you begin putting all this evidence and you begin to say, wait a minute, who could have done this? Some people say Leonardo da Vinci. Well, he might have been genius enough to be able to invent something like this. But he was born 100 years later. This was already in existence. So it could not have been Leonardo da Vinci doing it. He was born 100 years after we know that it was in Lille, France. So that theory goes out the window. So the scientists are asked, how did this come about? And the answer is, we do not know. Everybody agrees it is not a painting. It's not a painting. There is no mark of color or substances that would make a painting. The image is only on one side, meaning on this side of the cloth you see these markings. On the other side, nothing. So that if you were to do it with paint, the paint would see through. No. They have discovered through telescopes, microscopes, that the marks are only in 1 million of the surface. You have to look at it with a microscope to see that only the pixels, I mean the threads of a thread, not the thread in itself, the thousands of the thread is affected by this kind of coloring. It doesn't see through. Who could do that? How did it happen? Science says to this day, we do not know. And yet they believe it's a forgery. Why so much resistance, you might say? Why not say, yes, it is the cloth that wrapped the body? Definitely, everybody agrees, of a man of this measure, 6 foot tall, roughly, 175 pounds, 30 to 35 years old. They determine all that, but then they come up and say, we do not know how it happened. Well, we know how it happened, because the cloth was left behind. Where was the body of Jesus? If you say this is authentic, what you're saying is there was a resurrection. The body was not there. You remember the Gospels? Peter and John ran to the tomb when Mary Magdalene said, the body is not there. They took her away. She thought somebody stole the body. They ran there. What did they see? The cloth, not the body. So if you say this is authentic, you are admitting that there is a resurrection. And people don't want to say that. They don't want to do that because to some people there was no resurrection. So in here, with the help of this gentleman who came from Turin, Walter Pezzo, he is the one who generated all this. He gave me the description of the nails. What we have here is the actual replica of the nails, what the nails would have looked like that were used to crucify Jesus. These are the nails that would be used for the wrists. It would be the right dimension to be able to penetrate the flesh, and according to the wound, it's not in the palm, but it's in the wrist, so that it will hold up, okay? So if you see crucifixes done in the past, they all put the marks in the hand. They never really had seen this and be able to understand it. They only would see a section of it, and it would be the top, the head up to here, folded. Because remember, these are the folds. You can see where the folds are and where the cloth would be folded together. This nail was used to nail one of the foot to the cross. After he would be nailed to the patibulum, the cross beam on the ground, and it's understood from the studies of the shroud that one shoulder is dislocated. And it is understood that when they put the markings, the nails in the wrist, the holes were too far out. So what did they do? They tied the hand and they stretched the hand to fit the nail into the hole of the cross beam. They would hoist the man with ropes, and he would be hanging loose. The feet would be dangling there. They put the cross beam on the perpendicular beam, and then they would nail the feet to the wood. And they would use this nail to fix one foot to the wood. And then they would pierce both of them with another nail, so that both feet would be held to the cross. Now, you can imagine that. This man had gone through an arrest Thursday night. He was arrested in the garden. Once they arrested Jesus, he was as good as dead, because he was accused of blasphemy. And if you blaspheme, according to the Jewish law, you had to die. You cannot live in a community and poison the community with blasphemy. Remember, this is faith. You don't fool around with it. Either you believe it or you don't. And if you don't, you cannot live in the community, because you are like an infection that will grow in the community. So Jesus would be as good as dead. They took him before Caiaphas, and you all know the process there. He was accused, and finally Caiaphas asked the question, tell us, in God's name, are you the Son of God? And Jesus said, you said I am. And that's it. Once you do that, we know that Caiaphas ripped his garments. Blasphemy, he said. We don't need any more proof. He is worthy of death. And fine enough, they brought him before Pilate. Why did they bring him before Pilate? Because they could not condemn anybody to death according to the Roman law. Remember, they were a conquered nation. They had to obey the law of Rome. You cannot sentence anyone to death except Rome could do that. So they brought him to Pilate. Pilate examined him. He didn't see anything wrong with the man. There is no reason to kill him, to execute him. So they insisted. Finally, Pilate could not stand it anymore. He said, look, do whatever you want. He washed his hands and he said, but I will have him scourged. They took him to the praetorium inside. They stripped him naked. That's the procedure. They stripped him naked. They tied his hands above his head and they scourged him. Not only 39 times according to Jewish law. In the Bible it says you could scourge a person for punishment 40 times minus 1. That means 39 times. Rome did not have that regulation. You could scourge the man until the man died in the scourging. And that's what they were doing. So they took his clothes off, they scourged him, and then they took a cloak, something like this, a garment that the Roman soldier would use. They wrapped it around his body. Just imagine now, the body is totally wounded, frayed, shredded by that tool. They put something on his body, and what do you think would happen? This would stick to the body. Well, at the end of the mocking, they put him on this chair with this around him as if he were a king. They were kneeling before him, "Hail the King of the Jews." And they will slap him, punch him, kick him. Whatever you could do, it was allowed. Actually, the more you could make the man suffer, the better it would be. At the end of that, they crowned him with a crown of thorns. And the gospel says they beat the crown in place with a cane. Most likely a tool like this that the guards would use to control the crowd. They would beat on the head to stick the nails into, or the thorns into the cranium of the head, and the crown would stay there. It was not like a little circle around that the soldier would spend time weaving. They took a bush and they took it, put it on his head. And the shroud shows the wounds on his head. And then what did they do? They ripped that garment off his back, and you can imagine what that did. It would be reopening all the wounds where the cloth had stuck because of the blood and the sweat and the dust. They took that and they put his own clothes back on him. And they brought it before Pilate. And Pilate saw the man and he said, "Behold the man." They said to say, "What is the problem here?" And they still insisted, "Crucify him, crucify him." So Pilate said, "Okay, you go ahead and you do it yourselves." And he washed his hands of it, which was not right. He made a mistake, which he suffered for. He should not have done that, but he did. And so Jesus received the crossbeam. They put it on top of his shoulders, tied his hands to it, and they walked to Calvary. Now, in the Stations of the Cross, we have Jesus falling 3 times. Definitely, he didn't fall 3 times. He must have fallen many times. And when he would fall, he would have no protection. He would stumble, and that's it. He could not put his hands to protect from hitting the face. So how many times did he smash his face to the ground with this weight, which according to Walter must have been close to 70 kilos. 70 kilos, 140 pounds plus. And this weight would be on him, and he would be falling, stumbling, being kicked, punched, spit upon, insulted. Remember that this was not a glorious procession. This was a procession that everybody could jump in, punch him, kick him, because he was a condemned man. He had blasphemed. And the sign saying what he had done said, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." That's what Pilate insisted be written, which was kind of his way of getting back to the leaders and say, "I'll show you, he is the King of the Jews." But they said, "No, you should not write that. You should have written, he said he is the King of the Jews." And Pilate answered a famous phrase, "What I have written, I have written." At least he had that much that he took back, so to speak. But still, Jesus was crucified. When he came to Calvary, what happened? They took his garments off again. And he was nailed naked on the cross. Now, can you imagine that cloth, again, sticking to his body, kind of coagulating with the blood? It was ripped off, and that again, reopening all the wounds, all the suffering. I mean, sometimes you scratch your finger and you take the Band-Aid off, and you know the pain that is involved. Imagine when the whole body has been scourged, and you take the whole cloth, the tunic that he was wearing off. It must have been excruciating. And finally, he was crucified. And we know the story there, what happened, that he was given spiked wine, he refused to take it, and he went through 3 hours of agony hanging on the cross until he died. He died, the soldiers had to clean up because it was Friday afternoon, Saturday evening. Friday evening would start the Holy Sabbath, so they had to clear the whole thing out. They could not leave the bodies on the cross. They wanted to make sure that they would be disposed of. And what happened? They went to one of the thieves. He was still alive. They broke his legs so that he would collapse. He could not raise himself up anymore to breathe, and he died. They did the same with the other man beside Jesus. They came to Jesus. We are told he was already dead. To make sure we have the lance, the replica of the lance, we don't have it here. The soldiers approached him and pierced him on the side. And water and blood came out. They ascertained he was dead. Joseph of Arimathea asked for the body. Pilate was surprised that he had died so quickly. He said, go ahead. Why did they ask for the body? Because according to the law, anybody who had been crucified would not be buried as anybody else. They would be dumped into a common grave. They would be dumped. That's it. The body was not to be appreciated or honored with any burial. In this case, there was an exception. Pilate granted the body. Joseph of Arimathea provided the cloth. They wrapped it with aloe and myrrh, spices, 40 kilos of it. They put all the spices on top of the body. They put the cloth, and they rushed to put him in the grave. They had to do this before sundown, Friday afternoon, because it would begin with the Sabbath. They could not be doing work on the Sabbath. They will go back Sunday morning. They did. The body was not there. And that's why the people is what we're doing today. We are remembering what happened 2,000 years ago. And what you are looking at is an image, almost a picture, a silent witness. This image speaks and says, here I am. This is what I did for you. This is what happened to me, so that you will not forget. I am leaving, as it were, a visitor's card. I was here, but I'm not here anymore. I am risen. That's what this cloth shows. And that's what we are celebrating today. Now, if you have never seen it, if you never heard it, when you go home, if you punch in the Holy Shroud of Turin, you will spend the rest of your life reading about it. Because
Нет.
Thank you, Sharon. Your husband is here.
Ryan, let's go. Let's go.